Honestly, did you ever imagine that this was becoming a globally accepted credential across all the professionals and all the industries when you started?
The more you add in terms of the process of project management, the more time it's going to take away from really being able to make good, conscious decisions about the things that are going on in your project. Over-complication is worse than no complication.
Welcome to PMP with Prachi. Today I'm super excited because today we are joined by a man who didn't just witness the history of project management, he actually wrote it. Known globally as the godfather of the PMP. Lee Lambert as was one of the original founders of the project management professional certification back in 1984. But if you think he's all about rigid rules and dry spreadsheets, think again. With 6 decades of experience ranging from high security nuclear labs to training over 50,000 professionals all over the world, Lee is the industry's leading advocate for what he calls the common sense approach. Today, we are cutting through the buzzwords to talk about the real human element of getting things done. Lee, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on our show.
Well, thank you very much. I know we've been waiting a long time to make this happen, so I'm actually pretty excited about it.
Yeah, me too. So, why don't we get started by your background? You have an engineering background and you worked at Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory for nearly 30 years. That's a very long time. So, you have seen industries evolve. And what has been your experience and how did you pivot into project management?
Yeah, that's a good question. I get that all the time. My background is mechanical engineering. I do have a master's degree from George Washington University in project management, but that came much later. I started out my career on the drafting board, doing drawings for mechanical equipment, and I found out very quickly that not only was I not that good at it, it wasn't fun. And so I started looking around for other options, and I stumbled into a national laboratory role as a project manager. When I looked at it, I thought, well, shoot, I can do that. So I convinced them to give me a shot, and that was where it all kind of started. I found that my skills, which technically are okay, but my real skill is in people communications and that those kinds of things, enabling people and inspiring people to do work. So I just gently gravitated into that role, and then there's just a series of rather substantial promotions that put me in a very interesting position to be asked to participate in that PMP creation process. So from that, it's just been one thing after another that people listen to what I say. I hope I never send them in the wrong direction, but they do have a tendency to listen, and they realize that I'm going to be pretty candid about it. I don't make it sound like it's good if it isn't. So I've really taken a very commanding position on communication. I have 100,000 LinkedIn network people. I have so many opportunities. I speak. So far, I've spoken at 51 countries in the last 3 to 4 years. So I'm definitely project management guy.
Oh, so project management was way before when actually it was founded.
I started my career 1966,
Uh-huh.
and so we're pushing on. This year will be the anniversary 60 years in this business. So I've learned something during that time.
Mm-hmm. And you were there in the early 1980s when the PMP was just an idea. So, when you were working there in the laboratory, what was the specific problem or chaos in the industry that you convinced you a formal certification was absolutely necessary?
When I joined the PMI in 1978, of course, the PMP didn't come till '84, but I think we had started to realize that project management wasn't a hobby; it was a profession. It was a job class in and of itself, and PMI recognized that quite early on. And it took about 2 or 3 years for them to decide, we need to take the lead on establishing a professional reputation. So that's how it started to sort of work out. And then once we started to decide that it was going to be a profession, then we had to make out what constitutes a profession. What we found is one of the very early things is some kind of a certification process that literally certifies you are indeed a professional. This was not accepted all that quickly by the common project manager who has been doing it in their spare time for years. But it took us about 3 years. We started in '81, and 3 years later we rolled it out in Philadelphia at what was called the annual symposium at that time, and we conducted our first testing, and 55 people tested for that first exam. 39 of them passed, and sort of the rest is history. It's gone quite slowly up until we were kind of embraced by the corporate people in America, IBM, AT&T, GT, you name a big corporation, they embraced the PMP as their internal communication standard for a professional. So from that point on, it's been sort of a vertical line. We're at about 1.7 million PMPs in the world right now, and that number is growing rapidly, week by week, month by month. So I've kind of predicted that by the end of this decade, we're going to be pushing uh, 2 million.
Wow, that's huge. Uh, as you mentioned, we have a lot of PMPs and you predicted it early on. So, honestly, did you ever imagine that this was becoming a globally accepted credential across all the professionals and all the industries when you started? Yeah.
Optimistically, I think some of us were hoping it would be successful, but realistically, we knew that it was going to take a lot of work. It was going to take a lot of exposure. And no one at the time, now all the other four people that were involved in this have since passed away. So it's my memory. I hope it's good. But I can remember that we all talked amongst ourselves and thought, if we get 3 or 400, that'll kind of justify the profession. And it was slow. The first 6 8 years, we didn't see masses coming to the PMP. So we kind of anticipated that would happen. But then when the big guys took it on, everything changed, and we started to realize we were onto something, something that was important for people to recognize. When their boss wants you to do project management, that's a job. That's not what you do in your spare time. And since then, we've really made a big splash. And it was slower coming to the international market as well. Now they're all pulled all in, and so we see the number just going crazy. Now we're not the first to have certification. The IPMA people, international organization, they have a rather sophisticated certification process with different levels and different quality configurations. So we sort of slid in there, and people began to realize that we had something that was worthwhile, and we saw the numbers just go rapidly up.
So, if you can walk us through the journey of founding the certification of this credential up to making it happen, where you see people started adopting it and the acceptance globally. So, tell us more about the journey. How did it happen from the idea that you had in mind about this up to the point you started executing the idea and making it happen, that people started using it as a known certification? And how did it happen?
Yeah, it's we had to look into that a lot. We spent a lot of time interviewing organizations that had their own certification, like the accountants and the engineers. They had their own certification, so we spent a lot of time talking to them about what do we need to worry about. Well, they said first of all you have to have a qualification standard. Just because someone says they're a project manager doesn't mean they are. They need to show that they've been working in that field. I established the boundary, which I subsequently now wish I had not done, because I said 3 years. If you've got 3 years of experience, you're going to qualify to sit for the exam. Well, in retrospect, we've decided that, at least I've decided, that's not enough time. We see a lot of young people getting their PMP that you really start to question, are they really ready for this? So, but we saw that happen, and in the early times, we didn't see such an emphasis on getting the PMP. So we had to look at what is it we want to come out of it. What are the standards that we're going to be looking for? So we had to write qualification requirements, we had to write standard requirements, and the difficulty was at that time PMI didn't even have a PMBOK. There was no PMBOK in 1981. We didn't get our first published PMBOK until 1996. So
Wow.
we were executing certification for 10 to 12 years before we even had a PMBOK. Now, people say, well, how the heck did you do? Well, it turns out a lot of us had written white papers. I mean, there was a lot of information out there that would make you qualify. So we didn't feel too uncomfortable with that. But then when they finally, a guy named Bill Duncan, who just recently passed away, was one of the initial creators of that PMBOK, one of the primary authors, and he stayed with it for quite a while. But then what we decided was, and these are all such interesting facts, is that the body of knowledge for PMI and for project management was evolving. I mean, it was a new process. So every 4 years, PMI decided, time to step back and see what's evolved over these last 4 years, and then incorporate that into the PMBOK. So we ran on a 4 year orientation program where we said basically every 4 years we're going to review and revise the PMBOK to reflect the actual body of knowledge. So that meant when Agile came along, massive revisions to the PMBOK, and now the AI's come along, massive revisions. So that's one of the things that drove PMI's education thoughts. They said, well, if we're going to review the PMBOK and revise it, then we have to review the PMP exam and revise it so that it's current, so that somebody that's still working in the old days won't be as easy for them to get certified because they haven't experienced the new days, so to speak. So we've made a religious attempt to keep those revisions coming. Some people feel like we've made some mistakes along the way. When Agile became popular, it turns out that the PMP exam, we wanted it to be 50-50, 50 predictive, 50 Agile. Well, it turned out that a lot of the people that were contributing questions, and it's all done by volunteers, were of the Agile background. So all of a sudden we see that the exam started to look like 70% Agile and 30% predictive. So there's been a lot of complaints about that, but I think we've sort of settled on that. Now we'll see how the AI thing impacts it, because now you're throwing in a new mix, because AI applies to predictive, AI applies to the Agile environment. So now we're going to have to see what kind of a split we have. We want the exam to represent the current body of knowledge, and we want it to be challenging enough that you can't just take a boot camp if you're not an in-depth experienced project manager. You can't just take a boot camp and study for the test. A lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are getting their PMP, but some of those people are not truly qualified. And we don't find that out until they go out into the job market. They're hired based on their PMP and their project fails. So the first question owners of companies have is, well, what's the big deal about the PMP? We hired a PMP and he or she failed. So the credibility of the exam has been challenged, and we're trying to look at that now to see what we can do to eliminate that good test takers. We actually had a young man in, I think it was California. He became a PMP at 17 years old. Now,
Wow.
I don't know how he qualified, but he did, and he took the exam and he passed. And he wasn't trying to trick the system. He didn't try any games. He just was taking some project management classes in college, and he used that material plus a little of his own study time to pass the exam. And so when we found that, it came to our attention. People thought that's not good. We can't. You have a young college. Next thing you know, high school kids will be taking it. And so we actually took his PMP away from him, not implying that he did anything wrong, but just that he didn't officially meet the qualification standard. Because all those classes he was taking in college, that didn't apply to your 3 years of on-the-job experience. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a very tricky situation, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your view, it means a lot of money to these young people getting their PMP certification. I mean, some of the quotes that we get in our survey salaries will show a 30% delta between a project manager without the PMP and one with the PMP. So the incentive is pretty substantial. And so we're trying to balance all that out. And now that we're moving into this AI world, it's really changed the mix because it brings some power that a project manager didn't have before in regards to using the data and translating the data and all the things that go with AI. So we're going to see some relevant changes over the next year or so as the AI thing begins to blossom. In the beginning, it's just another good idea that everybody jumped on the bandwagon. But I think people are starting to realize, wow, and I know I'm one of them. This has really got some potential to increase the capabilities of a project manager.
Yeah. And I think project management is a skill everybody needs to learn. Like, even the person
Even though
who kid who got the PMP certification, I think it's more of a learning. Once you give the exam, it gives you that confidence to know the not only know the jargons, but also after passing the exam, you feel that you have now you can understand, you have absorbed, because the exam is taken in such a way that it's all scenario based questions, right? So it changes your perspective in general in managing the projects as well. So uh, it has been crafted very well, and it's good that PMP is adapting to new trends like agile and AI, and it is actually being agile, right? Because it is adapting
it
new
did.
trends.
Yeah, it really is. We're practicing what we preach. The thing about it is that here's my thing from long ago. I probably stole it from somebody. A project is a project is a project. It Everything's a project, and if everything's a project, then we're all project managers. So when I go into schools to do presentations about project management, I'll ask an individual, "What do you do when you go home at night?" And he'll tell me, "Oh, I do roadblocks and I do." And I said, "Well, you're running a project. That's exactly what you're doing. You don't realize that all of you're all project managers." So what this does is give them, as you said, the real capability to understand that they are in fact project managers. So the higher you move in the business, of course, the more skills you have to develop. But at the end of the day, we're all project managers.
Yes, yes. Even if you are not actually PMP title, but everybody is a project manager, as you said. Yes. So, our majority of our audience is PMP certified. So, what certification do you think one should consider pursuing if you already have PMP?
Well, I think what's happened, and this is really kind of how I got into it as well, is that what we find out, what good project managers find out, you got to figure out a way to get it done. And so if there was no, so-called authorized process or system, then we figured it out on our own. And that's one of the reasons certification is so important, because when you're in a big organization and everybody's doing ad hoc project management, then the communication across boundaries, across lines, gets hosed up because you're not speaking the same language. It's just like going to France and ordering a sandwich. They don't know what the heck you're talking about unless you say it in French. And so I think that's kind of the analogy that I like to use is, look, if we're all speaking the same language, then there's a much higher probability of understanding what it is we're saying.
Hmm. Now, here I would like to switch gears a bit and would like to talk about your book. It is titled The Project Management, The Common Sense Approach. In an era of complex software and massive frameworks, what is the most basic common sense principle that PMs still get wrong today?
Well, yeah, I'll use the book as a reference only because I think it sort of sends a message. When I went to Battelle Memorial Institute in Columbus, Ohio, to start this new division, one of the things the CEO said to me is, "We didn't mention it to you before you took the job, but we have to be validated by the U.S. Department of Energy that we have a repeatable, understood project management system." Well, it turns out that was my introduction to earned value. And basically, what happened was, if we were going to go after big government contracts, we had to have a validated system. So what he says to me is, and oh, by the way, Lee, that's what we want you to do. But Battelle is primarily an R&D. They're the largest R&D contract R&D organization in the world. So most of their staff is 50, 60% PhD. Now, if you've ever tried to teach a PhD project management, you know the frustration that you're going to run into. And so my CEO recognized that, and he said, how are you going to overcome the PhD resistance? And so my idea was to come up with a book that presented it in a way that didn't seem like it was threatening. So I started to incorporate cartoons, sayings, and those kinds of things into the book while making it clear what a WBS was, what earned value was, and so on. And that book has been now converted into a public commercial book, and I've got about 15,000 copies around the world. It wasn't ever intended to make money. It was intended to invigorate PhDs to accept earned value. And so I still, when I do some of these speeches for corporations, they'll ask me to order a couple hundred of those books so they can give them out to their people. So that's how the book got involved in it. And I've always been a common sense kind of guy. So I look at all this complexity that we've incorporated into project management, and I have to really temper that with, stop and think about, does this make sense? Does this really add value? And I think that projection has hit a lot of people very positively. I think people get overwhelmed by some of the complexity that we incorporate. And the AI thing hit me that way in the beginning But now that I've settled down and thought about it, wow, it's a great thing. And if I had just discounted it out of hand, I'd be missing some real opportunities. And I'm not going to be around that much longer to really capitalize on that. But I'm working on it all the time. I've taken the free courses that PMI has. I can have a conversation now and understand it. But I think the key thing is water down the complexity so where you can have a conversation with someone and they know what the heck you're talking about. If it gets so complex, I've got to go to books to find out what you said, then it's not going to be effective.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting that you got uh, interesting graphics to get people interested in the book. That's great. And what struck me is you are still learning AI, and that's something which inspires me. And I think it inspires a lot of people who are watching this video that if you are still learning and about AI or anything, you should do continuous learning no matter what stage, age you are at. Just keep learning.
I think you really nailed it. That's an important issue. And I think, again, PMI, I mean, you say what you want about PMI, but PMI is here for the profession. And when new products come out, when new concepts come out, they look at that very carefully. And if they determine that that's going to be an ongoing situation, they'll create a learning program. They'll create training to help people in the association get up to speed. Now, in the early days, they didn't have much revenue to operate with, so they had to charge money for all of this training to pay for it. Well, thank goodness now PMP has generated massive amounts of revenue that can be reinvested into PMI and provide multiple things for the members at no cost. I'll just use a specific example. When AI came out, and I first had my negative reaction, and then I started to look at it, and I realized I need to learn about it. Well, I was behind PMI already. They had already created 4 AI learning programs that were absolutely free to anyone who wanted to take it. So I tell the people in AI, AI is not going to take your job, but if somebody embraces AI and does the learning, they'll take your job. That's not AI. That's you falling behind the learning curve. So PMI does that regularly, and they've got some classes that are still paid that are kind of optional for the individual, but most of their real basic learning programs are free. And if you go back and look at how much some of those would have cost you, in fact, that was a deterrent in the early days. People couldn't afford to take classes to come up the learning curve. Well, now that's no excuse. They're free, and so they're not that difficult. I've taken all 4 of them. I did fine. I understand them. So you don't have to be a brain surgeon to figure this out. And I think the more we see AI incorporating new and interesting technologies, the more you're going to see opportunities for PMI. And we're actually looking at and Pierre Lemon, our CEO, announced it at the Global Summit in Phoenix that they're working on some kind of an advanced certification. It's not going to be PMP on steroids. That's not what we're shooting for. We're shooting for some new opportunity to have people have an up the hierarchy sort of an opportunity by learning what it is we're going to be trying to certify. So it's being debated now. There's so much to do. If you think the PMP took a long time, this could even take longer because it's so critical to have it right. If we're talking about helping people move into upper levels of management, it's got to be right. And so we're investing a lot of effort in that. I say we're like I'm not a PMI guy other than the commitment to the beauty of what they do. So I think
Yeah,
that
that's good.
I think certifications are a good thing. I think you can have a proliferation of them. People need to use common sense, get that, to decide what do I want to be certified in. When I go to the summits, people corner me and they'll give me their business card, and on the front of the business cards, all the certifications, except that's to turn the business card over to get all the rest of their certifications on the back. So when I see one of those, I congratulate him, and then I ask him a simple question. I said, "Do you really? What is it you really do? Because this says you could do anything." So you have to be careful. I have one certification. I have the PFP. That's it. Now I could use risk. I think risk is a very important one, but I think we have to use a little common sense to say, let's only get certified in those areas that we're dealing in, or those areas we want to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't see a lot of people. It's good that PMI is embracing new trends like AI and incorporating it into PMP and in general into project management. I don't see a lot of other certificates getting adopting new trends. They were established and it's still the same when they started it, right? So it's good that PMI is incorporating the trends. And talking about the common sense approach, circling back to it, you have seen industries evolve from waterfall to agile and beyond. Do you think we are overcomplicating things, or is the common sense core still the same regardless of the methodology?
Think it's still in vogue. I think, the sophistication of the tool doesn't eliminate common sense. It actually causes it to be more important because with those sophisticated tools, there's a myriad of things I can do, and common sense would say, "Well, don't do those. That's not going to add value to what you do." So I think that common sense will always prevail. I think we waste a lot of effort sometimes in getting so comfortable with sophisticated tools that we use the tool for tool's sake instead of project management. Now, the reason that tipped me off was back a few years ago, the head of one of the major software companies, in fact, he's claiming to be the richest man in the world right now, Ellison, he purchased the Primavera project management package. In other words, he paid a lot of money. Nobody's told me how much, but a lot of money to buy it. And as soon as he did that, I knew we were on good ground because he doesn't make investment decisions that aren't really beneficial. And so now, if you have a particular project that needs sophistication, then you can get Primavera with a P6 planning model and do very, very sophisticated. Now, it turns out only the biggest government contractors and the government have Primavera because it's so darn expensive. So that really says to me uh, it's not necessary for the mom and pop project. And so that means let's find the tool that can do what we need it to do, and not all those extraneous bells and whistles that Primavera has. So I think we're never going to get over the common sense thing. I think people tend to think if it's common sense, it must be too simple. Well, that's not true at all. Common sense can actually be very complicated, but let's only do what we need to, not more.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Ali, talking about the common sense approach, you led a medical diagnostics project that was dubbed a miracle because it finished in 18 months instead of typically 3 years. So, what was the common sense secret to that 50% time reduction?
Well, the common sense basis for the book was earned value, and to me, earned value is common sense. If I want to produce something and I estimate how much it's going to take and how long it's going to take, then the earned value is comparing what I wanted it to be with what it is. We don't do that very well. We don't really quantify the value. So we put out a schedule and we're either behind schedule or ahead of schedule. Well, in earned value, you can be ahead of schedule and still be good, still be doing a good job. Because when you look at it, then you say, well, then if I'm ahead of schedule, I should be over cost because I've done more work than I planned to do. That's common sense. That's not the way we do it. If you show your schedule and it's behind, you got to give a variance explanation. What's going on? Why are you behind? Well, if you look a little closer at the data, you'd see we're not behind. We're actually ahead of schedule. And so that was the whole foundation of earned value for me. It started in the 60s with the Air Force, but when I adopted it at GE, we used it a lot. The difference was everybody used the excuse it's too complicated. Well, maintaining the data consistency is complicated if you're using earned value because you have massive amounts. Well, I just put an article out a year ago that said this may be the rebirth of earned value because now with AI, I have the ability to do the things I used to do take 3-4 days. You can do it in 15 minutes. And so I think I keep thinking we'll see a resurgence of earned value, but I'm not seeing it yet. I'm being patient. We'll see what happens.
And long before it was a buzzword, you were a proponent of servant leadership. How do you maintain that mindset when a project is failing and stakeholders are screaming for results?
Yeah, it's all projects aren't the same. All projects are projects, but they're not the same. And what I've encouraged people to do is to really think about what you're trying to accomplish, so that depending on the project, now we have to recognize that it's easy to say project to project, but the fact of the matter is some types of projects require different levels of project management. And so the project manager needs to be wise enough to determine by project what needs to be applied and what doesn't. We don't have, at least I don't have, a one size fits all. It's just not the case. Some projects require some things, some projects don't. And remember, the more you add in terms of the process of project management, the more time it's going to take away from really being able to make good, conscious decisions about the things that are going on in your project. So over complication is worse than no complication. So I really try to get people to recognize, well, for this kind of a project, that this is what I'm going to do. And some organizations try to develop phased approaches where you can apply different phases in different parts of the project. But I think sometimes people who have a system stop thinking, and they let the system drive what's being done on the project. Big mistake. Big mistake. The process should be driven by the project manager.
But how do you maintain that mindset of servant leadership usually?
Well, you hit on so many interesting points. The hot topic right now today in project management mindset. Oh my God, I see it everywhere I go. They start talking on it and they say, well, it all depends on the mindset. Well, that's true. I mean, that's obviously true. And one of the guys that is a great trainer for PMP Prep who's in India. I'm going to see him next week. He's in India. He has 10,000 people that he has taught who are now PMP. His whole training program, it's consistent with PMI, don't get me wrong, but his whole training program emphasizes mindset. When you're preparing to take the certification exam, you have to be in the right mindset. And he's spot on. People praise him. Oh, Thank you for enlightening me to the mindset. So basically, you said you got to think about what it is you're getting into and what things apply and what things don't. That's your mindset. And so I, there's always a buzzword, and right now it's mindset. And I think that it's valid. It's valid. It's not some magic, but for this guy, he's turned it into magic, and the praise that comes in for him is off the chart. Young guy, only been in the business of maybe 10 years, technical guy to begin with, but now he's God's gift to PMP prep.
And you
Right.
often say you often say project managers don't do the work, they get the work done through others. So how do you teach a technical person who loves doing to transition into the facilitation role? Because a lot of technical people are getting into project management as well.
Yeah, it's funny. One of my call her a student only because 20 years ago she was a student. Who's big in EPMO. She has a post on LinkedIn that today I just responded to it. That basically said the subject matter expert does not need to be the project manager. Now, translated into my language, that basically says the project manager doesn't do work, they get work done through the subject matter experts. And that frees a lot of people up mentally because just because you're a good subject matter expert does not mean you'll be a good project manager. And so they start to realize they're really two distinctly different jobs that come together in the project format. But whenever people ask me what kind of projects do you manage, I say I manage any of them. I don't care. Whatever the project is, I'll manage it. And they say, well, where are you going to get all your answers? I said, well, that's what I'll figure out. I don't have to know all the answers. I just have to know where to get them. And I think people need to realize that. I think oftentimes project people, especially, get sort of committed to subject matter expert standards, and they just want to keep getting smarter and smarter in the subject matter. Well, that's great if you're going to be a project contributor, but if you're going to be the project manager, you can't keep track of all that stuff. That's why you have people assigned to your project with certain skill sets. And I think that I firmly believe it. I've been not given a job a time or two because I didn't have that specific subject matter expertise. And I mean that's a loss on their part. But the fact of the matter was they are so pronounced, and you got to know all the technical answers to be a project manager that they've missed a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, I always say that if you are not a technical expert and you are managing that project, I think it's a bliss in disguise because you are not getting into too much details and nitty gritty of the things. So, yeah, absolutely. And that really hits the home. We get so much caught up in doing things right, the process and the math, that we forget to lead the people. And as the saying goes, management is doing things right and leadership is doing the right things.
Let me say one thing that we haven't really broached on. I know we're running out of time, but one of the things that PMI again has recognized this year and next year is a much stronger emphasis on what used to be called soft skills. That's what I always called when I was young. Now they've changed it to power skills. Well, I was resistant to that in the beginning, and just like everything else, the more I thought about it, the more it's correct. If you think about project management, you probably won't be as successful if you haven't developed the power skills, the empathy, the communications, all of those kinds of things that don't have a tool, they don't have a software package, they require experience. And and one of the things I emphasize to all my project managers is none of this is going to matter if you can't communicate it effectively. And so I think that this year, more than any I've seen, and I think that's because of Pierre, he has really started to emphasize power skills. And even the specific one of empathy, he's very good at saying, hey, we need to understand why people act the way they do. What is it that's motivating them? What am I not doing that I need to do to increase productivity and effectiveness? So I think we're going to see a lot more personal skills being developed as we move forward. And then combine that with all the power of project management systems, we're going to be in a much better place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always say that communication is for project managers, it's about 70 to 80%. It's all about communication, how you communicate with your stakeholders. And rest can be taken care by the team. Majority of the part is communication. So here to wrap things up, you have been active in this field for over 5 or 6 decades now, I would say, and still travel the world as an ambassador. So what is your secret to staying curious and avoiding burnout after 50 or 55 plus years in such a high pressure field?
Well, it's really you want to avoid is once you do it, then you're not around anymore. So my view has always been if you don't enjoy what you do, then stop doing it. Find out what you do enjoy. I used to tell my people that you're in trouble when you get up in the morning. The first thing you ask is how much sick time do you have left. Uh, that that's your indication that you're not enjoying going to work. That's why people that have these records for 12 years without a missed day, and kids go to school for 5 years and never miss a day because they enjoy it. They're having fun. They're meeting people. They're integrating with society. Well, it's the same way with projects. I That's why I left. The first job I had was I wasn't enjoying it at all. And so that's what you have to look at. And so what I do, I'm not anymore. What I used to do is at the end of the day, I just do a self-assessment. What you do today? What did you wish you weren't doing today? And start to get a boundary set around where do I want to go? And even in project management, I knew that managing projects made me feel good. I like that. I like the interaction with other people, but I still decided that's not really what I want to do. And in about 1985, 86, I realized this is what I want to do. I want to share the knowledge I've gained over all these years with people who can take advantage of it. And so I love what I do. I mean, this podcast, I don't know how many of these I do. I do them anytime, anywhere, because I think if even two or three people listen and take something valuable away, we've made progress. So my theory: have fun or stop doing it.
Yeah, that was an absolute masterclass, Lee. And the biggest takeaway for me personally today is project management isn't about the software you use, it's about the people you lead and how you communicate. And also embrace things. Start embracing things, start learning new things, be a continuous learner. Um, as Lee says, PMs don't do work, they get work done through others.
Right.
If you want to learn more from Lee, you can find his book, Project Management, The Common Sense Approach, or connect with him on LinkedIn, where he continues to be one of the most active and influential voices in the field. Lee, thank you for sharing your stories and your wisdom with us today. To our listeners, stop managing the tools and start leading the projects and people. Let us know in the comment section below what was your best takeaway from this episode. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye. Thank you again so much, Lee, for your time and commitment.